made it to the Dutch coast to put in an invasion, you could say that also the Third Anglo-Dutch War was relatively successful for the Dutch, but certainly not the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War in the late 18th century. It was also, again, a disaster for the Dutch.
But there's always...
Basically, when the Dutch allied with, when the English were allied with the French, it went badly for the English. When the Dutch allied with the French, it went bad for the Dutch. So basically, the rule of thumb for this thing is for the Dutch not to ally with the French. Exactly. That basically becomes the rule of thumb. Whenever they ally, whoever allies with the French ends up losing the war. So basically, it needs to be Anglo-Dutch versus the French, then we win.
You can also look to the Spaniards with it in the late 18th, early 19th century. It's the same story.
Yeah. But if you look at the Battle of the Medway, or the raid on the Medway, I mean, you also have to look at 1 year before. It was the Great Fire of London. Whole London burned down, but there was hardly any money left to fight this war with the Dutch. And the big British fleet, it was laid up at the Medway. So they were not really in the position to fight. And
no, they just stuck them behind a chain, the most passive of defences.
No, I think the main enemy for the Dutch at the Medway was, of course, the environment. It was a very shallow river over there, but the Dutch had some experience with it in their own waters, so it was quite an enterprise to do that. But the main enemy in that case was more or less the environment and the shallow waters over there. But they did well.
With for the first time, the Dutch Marines having a major operation.
Yes, they were founded in 1665. Yes.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've been making some cursory preparation for the stream and even for this older history, and it sounded like a kind of a fascinating era when both sides were grappling with basically with forming the new system of battle, the line of battle back then in the 17th century. That basically in some battles. The Dutch were using linear formation, the English were using the older, like rush them and hope for the best. In the other battles, it was the other way around. So, like, was this a time when the doctrines were just being built, or?
Lots of doctrines were being developed, but also, Taki, just before anyone else pops in an answer, you've been doing research on Age of Sail. Does this mean there's an Age of Sail World of Warships coming? Because I know several people who will be very, very happy with that.
Not saying anything.
You could have Admiral de Ruyter as your commander.
But there was talk in the late 16th century already in Portugal that the Portuguese had some sort of doctrine with the battle in line fighting. But that was already again lost in the early 17th century. But there are some archive findings on that the Portuguese had the same sort of doctrine in the late 16th century.
There's actually a comment from MD Titus from before the event that apparently in 2017 there was a large event held by Medway Council commemorating the Battle of Medway. Didn't see it, but I have to say it was very entertaining in Den Helder Museum, the parts of the exposition where you can relive through the raid. Even though I never managed to ram the fire ship into the target.
One of the nicest things, of course, was that the Dutch captured the Royal Charles, which was the flagship. Imagine sailing to Japan and catching the Yamamoto and bring it home to Holland. And it's comparable, I would say. And we still have that stern of that ship. It's in our National Museum. And I think in 2017 it was lent to the British to put on display for this special year.
The Holland patrol ship over there with our king.
Yeah. There's a question also. I know. Oh yeah, from not here. did the Dutch Navy make a contribution during the Napoleonic Wars? And if so, what was it?
Well, as I said, it was after the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War, which we lost gallantly. But during the cooperation with the French, all expeditions with the French or apart as the Dutch Republican Army or the Royal Dutch Navy under the French king, the brother of Napoleon, Louis. All expeditions and fights ended in disaster, I must say. So there was contribution, but that was not a big success in the end.
And there is a rather interesting background to that, because at the moment, there is an admiral, of course, who's commemorated in the Royal Navy, which is often forgotten, is that HMS Duncan is named for Admiral Duncan, who, of course, won the Battle of Camperdown, which in many ways is actually as important as Trafalgar, because whilst Nelson, yes, defeats the French and the Franco-Spanish invasion fleet, in many ways the Brits were more worried about the Dutch invasion fleet, especially as it came at the time in which the Royal Navy was dealing with mass unrest in its own ranks over pay and various issues, and various ships were mutinying. Admiral Duncan, who was a real giant of a man, at one point holds a man over the side of a ship and goes, "Does anyone wish to challenge me for command of this fleet?"